Thank you. I appreciate the Burnaby Writers Group as well. I live on the lands of the Stoloko Salish First Nation here, who have been here for about 10,000 years. And I was at a longhouse ceremony about 2 weeks ago here in Abbotsford, in which apologies were made. It was a long evening, but ultimately quite rewarding. Yeah, my bio, I know it's kind of an odd one. Um, I grew up in Yarrow, which was it was a traumatized community. My brand of Mennonites were from Russia. My parents and grandparents both came from Russia, my parents as children. And they settled eventually in Yarrow, where they replicated where they had lived in Russia, just and kind of regressed in time. So there was control happening in the sense of, we have to go back to the old ways because they were frightened. So I'm going to start. Mennonites are a very weird kettle of fish. Where everything from, I guess, me to Amish to Bolivian Mennonites. Miriam Taves writes about them, to the near million Mennonites in Ethiopia and many in Indonesia and India. It's Congo. So it's a very strange global community, and it's impossible to describe it. But I come from a so-called ethnic group, and we were very ingrown after the initial years of severe persecution. Many thousands died at the stake. Yeah. It isn't a pleasant history, really. So I'll just read a few from my most recent book, Finding Home. It's about 1 year old now. It follows a kind of trajectory from losing home to reclaiming it at the end. And the very first one goes back to how I grew up. I think I'll just start there. A brief bio. Hunger is necessary for words, for lament. As the past filters away, vanishes into fog, which is swirling over the dikes today on a chilly January morning. Snow threatening, Vedder Mountain as blue as that which cannot be spoken. The dikes, strengthened after the great flood of 1948, another traumatic event in the lives of my Russian refugees after the Holocaust of the Bolshevik Revolution, after fleeing with enough to survive the day, and finding this valley rainy and warm. A river ran through it, and they built a village, a replica of what they'd lost in Russia, their motherland. My childhood was heavy with their grief, with their bitterness too, and the control that tainted their souls. One way, go this way, they said, yet we were loved. They were hungry. Embrace found a place there. And today I'm walking the dike that's holding back that flood of grief, and Vedder Mountain with its stone silent gaze. And all those people gone, and memories of the west wind that blew freedom, and farmers in the damp, and grandmothers with shawls, and the minister saying, go in peace, you are blessed. I think when I was raised in that little village, um, it was, as they say, of people who grow up in Africa, your feet don't touch the ground for your first 2 years. You're always being swept up. Anyway, I'm going to move on. The Mennonite thing is always in the background. A novelist friend of mine has said, I'm nothing if not political, and you're going to probably find that here. I'm going to go to something called Dismembrance Day, written on Remembrance Day, probably years ago. The Mennonite church has largely been a church of peace, like the Quakers, with many exceptions, of course. The American Mennonite Church, in particular, is no longer there to a great extent, anyway. But ever since I was young, we marched against the war in Vietnam. The American War, as the Vietnamese call it, 3 million of them, for heaven's sakes. What the hell were we doing? It is unimaginably stupid, and it's worse than what's happening in Ukraine. Well, sorry, I'm rambling. Dismembrance Day, I wrote this after a Canadian Prime Minister said that Canada came of age during World War I. And well, this is my response. Remember, you said, on this day of marches, speeches, and rain. Remember Vimy, Passchendaele, when our nation came of age, when our lads, I'd rather abide in altered history, when our lads at Vimy, Passchendaele, turned their guns on their officers. Fuck you, sirs, we're going home. And transport ships took the boys back to their farms, their cities, their parents, their miraculous routine, because a nation built on the murder of children is a turd on the polished floor of Parliament. I probably should have warned you about the blue language. I hope that didn't trigger anyone. All right, this book goes on. I do write little story poems. They're almost prose poetry, you know. I'll read one of those. This is about a homeless kid, and this happened in Abbotsford a couple of years ago. I was lined up at the cashier, and very young. He must have been in his 20s, 30 max, maybe even a teenager. It's hard to tell with homeless, but again, you know, what are they doing on the streets? It just, our individualistic culture has put people on the periphery, and I think almost intentionally. It's what bureaucracies do. And I know we care, but we haven't made any progress. I read somewhere that a couple of hundred years ago in Europe, there were homeless people as well. And they would wander from village to village, and they were taken care of by turn by the locals. They would feed them, put them up for the night in the hayloft, if nothing else. That's totally impossible these days. We have gotten to a place. The village where I grew up actually worked in a certain sense. I shouldn't go on too long here, but we worked together. We created our own waterworks system. We built our own roads, and we become very alienated from each other. Etiquette for shoplifters. Now stop the politics now. So a polite bandit. Her smile is bright, brilliant, blonde. I'm buying a bottle of whiskey for a weekend with the boys, and she must be exhausted, standing erect at the till through the New Year rush. Yet the smile is genuine. That'll be a total of, she says, and the smile has vanished into history. The abrupt whoosh of the automatic door, a shadow figure behind me. and out into the parking lot, muttering, "Sorry," as he runs. Bottles of booze clanking underneath his long coat, knee-high shorts, knee-high socks, shorts, though it's winter, and running. Sorry, with a half-crab waddle, a thief with a conscience running to nowhere. So why is he allowed in here, I ask. Well, he won't be any more, she says. Probably homeless, I say, and she, yeah, I know. What's to be done? Well, have a good day, she says, and the smile is back, brilliant and blonde as ever. You too, I say, and he is running still through the musty corners of our minds, sweaty and dirty with that deep ocean half-crab waddle. Gone, sorry, gone. I'm going to read Blacktail. We have a lot of deer wandering past our place here, where Janet Bolt and I live in the same complex. There have been bear as well. Recently, a doe and 2 fawns. And they're unbearably cute, of course. Some people feed them. We probably shouldn't. But this happened a few years ago. It's a prose poem again. It's a little lighter. So I'll get away from the heaviness here. Blacktail. Pacific blacktail, I'm told, is the species here. 5 years ago, mythically speaking, driven from their Valley of Eden by mega homes on the slopes, black-tailed deer sauntering past my window, chewing on morning glory, tracing a path through ivy, glancing up and now and then, startled but without fear. No predators except the bulldozers in the woods. And behind them, a lurching doe, and it's my turn to be startled, her rear left leg gone below the knee bone. And her suffering put her down? And why would the pain of a single deer divert me from the genocide of millions? Nevertheless, I phone the Department of Wildlife. I get referred. Finally, though, a real voice. It happens all the time, he says. Maybe the foot gets caught in a trap. Or sometimes, he says, the leg just falls off. And what does that mean? And if the leg's gone above the knee bone, he says, the deer will die. But otherwise, so nothing to be done. A 3-legged blacktail wandering the suburbs. An image of distress imprinted on the day. Yesterday, mythically speaking, out of Eden, 2 does, 2 fawns, glistening in the rain, chewing on morning glory down the muddy deer trail past my window. They amble on, looking for greener, or rather the first 3 do. Trailing behind is that doe, lurching, her rear left leg gone below the knee bone, and painful to see, but she has survived, thrived. Eden is falling with the rain. The perfect clarity of place. The losses, the loves that have no predators. I still get a bit choked up remembering that. I'll end with something a little more recent. It's kind of whimsical. I write a lot of poetry with a sense of humor. Journals don't like it. I don't even bother. I remember sending 3 poems to a journal some years ago, an anthology. one was funny. The other two got published. The funny one was not. It was every bit as good as the other two. But I don't know, there's something about seriousness among poets. We all live in that dark place. I think we have to. I mean, Shakespeare is just full of jokes. Even in his darkest moments, he's joking. And anyway, this poem is called Average. It's not really funny, but it's whimsical. And I'll just end with that. The average man is a useful thing. Likewise, the average woman. They make the world go round and arrive at the same place the next day. They utter a cliche to mark the dawn. The average cliche finds new life in social media, spawning new generations of average speech. The typical researcher arrives at work daily, anxious to propagate new data. The resulting algorithms indicate that someone dies with every cliche.